Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. This is Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. Good morning. It is 6 o'clock here in the morning, Calgary, Alberta, May 26th, Wednesday morning. I'm just happy to be here. This is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another, and we're on for 30 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com, and my chat room is open if anybody wants to sit in there, if anybody's awake at this time. We're going to continue talking about what we were talking about yesterday, and that is cutting and self-injury, self-harm help, support, and treatment from Help Guide. I found this on helpguide.org, which is a great website for, it says, understanding, prevent, and resolve life's challenges. And Help Guide is a great website. I really like Help Guide's website. They have all kinds of information on there, really just about everything. That anybody could be experiencing stress and like stress management, and if people are having problems, just with any issue really, eating disorders, child abuse information, domestic violence information, just anything that could be going on in someone's life, that can be causing them some trouble. There's all kinds of great information on there, and resources and links and references, and it's really great. I really like that website. So we'll continue on talking about that today, and I just think it's really important to take a look at it. I already went over that a long time ago, but you have to go through like 200 and something archives to get to it, and then you have to find it. I've done over 200 and almost probably 230 shows now. So it's a lot to go back and look through. So I thought we'd just cover it again and maybe add some more information to it. It's really important to take a look at it and why people do self-injure and, or self-sabotage their lives, right? Because lots of people do it, and it doesn't necessarily mean they were abused. It's something that people do to cope. It's a way of coping. And a lot of people, it's actually addictive. It becomes addictive because it, for whatever reason, people, if they derive some sort of sense of comfort from it, then it becomes addictive. And it's really, there's other ways to learn how to cope without hurting ourselves. And so that's the whole issue. And self-sabotage, it's just that's a way that people can, without even knowing it, sabotage their own lives, like quitting jobs, ending relationships, you just never know what it could be. Self-sabotaging a person's life is, a lot of times there's underlying issues behind that. And if we can just take a look at those issues, and solve those issues, then we probably wouldn't self-sabotage or self-injure ourselves, right? So that's the whole thing. It's so important to know that we can get help, and that there is help out there, there's hope out there, and there's all kinds of ways to get help. We don't have to suffer alone and suffer in silence. That's why I do this show, the One Child Abuse Survivor to Another, because I know that there are millions and millions and millions of child abuse survivors out there, and domestic violence survivors out there as well. So we're not alone. Sadly, I wish it was just like one person, because one person could say, well, at least it's just me, and the rest of the world could just go on and be happy. But unfortunately, that's not the case. 1 out of 3 girls, pretty much, that's stats pretty much across the board. 1 out of 6 boys will be sexually abused before the age of 18 in some way. And also, the stats run pretty similar to physical, verbal, emotional, psychological abuse as well, as far as being abused as children. So it's 1 in 3, 1 in 4 girls, 1 in 6, 1 in 7 boys. That's the general statistics. And that's just horrible. I mean, when you think about it, there's websites out there that with stats on them that say there's like 60 million survivors of child sexual abuse in the United States alone. 60 million. I mean, that's just crazy. So, if it's just not right, and we really need to work on getting this stopped, right? But there are a lot of survivors out there. I know this, and so I just wanted to be one more voice, and just to add to everybody else's to say, everybody just needs to keep reaching out and moving forward, and on their healing journey, and just do whatever you can to find that help, so that you can live a life that you really deserve to live, which is a good life, right, and a healthy life, and a life that matters and means something. Because when you're abused as a child, you don't have that opportunity, obviously, and then quite often as adults, if you make it to adulthood, then it's really hard to try to overcome those learned behaviors and all that emotional and psychological damage that's done regarding abuse, as well as dealing with physical symptoms from the abuse. So it's very hard on adult survivors, and I know I am one, and so therefore, I understand, what people could be going through at any given time, dealing with being survivors of child abuse. So that's why I wanted to do this show. So I'm not a professional. I don't hold any professional counseling certificates or therapy certificates. I'm just a person who cares, and I really want to see people go forward and have a good life and not hurt themselves and not end their lives. And, if you've been abused already, you sure don't deserve any more. That's the whole issue there. And we sure don't. We need to, if a person's been abused in their lifetime, especially as a child, we deserve to have a good life, to take away and make up for all that pain and horror, growing up abused. And I just, I know that so many people have a hard time getting past the stuff that really hurts. And I know it took me a long, long time. I'm in my 40s now, and it took me until I was 41 to actually start making some sense of it and start to realize that, hey, I do deserve to be here, first of all. I do deserve to have a good life. I'm going to have to work for it. It's not going to fall in my lap, but I really wanted to heal in my heart. I wanted my heart to heal and to have love in my heart and to have care and compassion, even for myself, to learn how to love myself and love this life, And so it wasn't until I was 41 that I finally started looking at it in a big picture, instead of just sitting around feeling very, very much a wounded person. I started to take a look at what I needed to do to allow myself to have a good life and to heal from all of this, right? But in order to do that, I had to do some real work on myself and do some real searching and seeking for what was causing me to do what I was doing and why I was feeling the way I was. So, I would just suggest everybody just reach out. I was suffering in silence for so many years, never really reached out to get help. And most of my friends growing up were abused as children as well. And so we relied on each other, but because we were abused and we were living in that environment, we really didn't talk about it too much. We just tried to help each other. Then as an adult, I didn't really trust therapists or counselors, but because I was brought up to not trust them, right? And so I never thought about getting help that way. But I finally, about 7 months ago, last October, September, October, I started looking around at group support, got into a couple of groups for adult survivors of child abuse. And these people really helped me to see that, I was not alone, first of all, and I did deserve to have a good life, you know what I mean? And just by talking to some of these people, and there's still some of them that are my friends here today, just by getting to talk to them and realize, hey, I'm not alone. And sadly, there's so many of us out here, but they're all getting help and they're all reaching out, and so that's what I have to do. So as soon as I started reaching out, then all these hands started reaching out to me. So that's why I'm here doing this show. Just to be one more person to let people know that, hey, it's true. You have to find what works for you. Some people would not prefer group support because they wouldn't want to tell people or feel comfortable telling people what happened to them. And so that's why therapists and counselors are good, because it's a one-on-one situation and they can really get the specified help and the specific help that they need. Group support for me was way more comfortable. I feel way more comfortable in groups. I don't trust single adult situations. Even today I have a bit of problems with relationships with people. I'm better off in a group, and I just feel there's safety in numbers, right? And so, but everybody's different, and everybody has different ways of because we're all different personalities and been through different things, right? So that's why it's important to know, that I think if you have found a counselor and they haven't worked for you, and you found a therapist and they haven't worked for you, I've read that we just need to keep looking for one that will actually work with us. And to be very specific, look for a sort of a specialist if you can, someone who specializes in the field of what we've been through. So whether it's child sexual abuse or actual physical abuse, verbal abuse, because there would be therapists and counselors who actually specialize in those fields, and that's that's what I would do, and that's what I will do when I search out a counselor and a therapist when I can actually afford to go. So that's the whole issue. Just so that we know we're not alone. We're not suffering alone in silence. I think that's just the worst feeling to think that you're just alone and that nobody cares, and that because I have found a whole bunch of people that do care. Now my own family doesn't really care, and that's the truth. They're sadly suffering it themselves, right? And so they can't care. They grew up in the same dysfunctional home that I did, but they haven't done any work on themselves, and they just ignore the past, and they don't try to see what happened and what caused them to feel the way they do. And so we don't, come together supportive that way. We're still very much dysfunctional. So all these people that I met just recently really are my family. I consider them my family because they actually care about me. You know what I mean? They check in with me every day, which my own family does not do. They check to see how I'm doing, and they're just there for me if I need something, whereas my own family is not. My sister is really the only one who's close to me, and even still, we do not talk about things, and we don't try to help each other get past stuff. We're just very much separate and suffer in silence, right? Within a family. So I mean, this is just the thing. We don't often have families to talk to, or people in our lives to talk to, and so that's why I would just hope that everybody would reach out and continue to reach out and look for that help and look for that hope wherever you can to find it. Right? It's so important. So. And if you're a young person under the age of 18, there's a lot of adult content on here talking about child abuse issues and adult survivor issues, and that's why I ask children under the age of 18 or young people under the age of 18 to have someone to sort of give you permission to listen to this show, someone who's an adult who can listen to the show and then make sure it's okay for you to listen to, because I fight for child rights, I stand up for child rights, and I will do that for the rest of my life. And there's so many child sexual predators out there online that I think parents, young people, you should have your parents or someone who cares look in on what you're doing online so that you can save your life. And first, so you can save yourself from a lifetime of horror, from being attacked by a child sexual predator. You really have to be diligent and careful. There's a lot of sick people out there, millions of them actually. And check out the FBI's website. They have a great website on internet safety. And there's other websites too for kids. And that really show people how to keep themselves safe online. So that's why I ask people to have someone listen to the show with them to make sure that it's okay, because I'm just one person talking about child abuse and adult survivor issues, and I just think everyone should listen at their own discretion, and young people should have permission to listen to the show. So we'll get right into it. And yesterday we were talking about the fact that self-injury, who self-injures, and they said there's about 2 million people in the United States that are self-injurers, and that's when this article was written, right? 2 million that they know about, and most of it's not reported. So when you think about that, who knows how many people actually self-injure in some way, right? There's 2 million known cases in the United States, but that's just the ones that are actually reported, where people maybe they have to go to the hospital because they've hurt themselves too badly that they can't, they have to go in for hospitalization, or either that they they tell their therapist or their counselor that they have been self-injuring, sort of thing. So that's why I think it's so underreported, and people do self-injure, and for many reasons. So I wanted to take a look at this article, and they said worldwide, who knows how many people self-injure, because worldwide it is happening. All around the world, not just North America. It's not strictly just a North American issue, right? This is a worldwide issue. And lots of people will self-injure without even they're not really trying to kill themselves. It's not really a suicidal act. It's what it is. It's a way to cope with the pain or with whatever a person is feeling. They might have too many intense feelings, so they self-injure. And I also know people who self-injure because they have a hard time feeling anything at all, so they need to feel something. And for me, I wanted to self-injure, and I really did want to hurt myself because I was feeling too much emotion. I felt that my heart was going to explode, and that if I couldn't let that emotion out without just screaming, at the top of my head, which I just didn't want to do. I thought, if I self-injure, that will show people the pain that's in my heart. And so that's why I wanted to do it. I actually stopped myself from doing it. The last time that I was actually attempting to do that, I made a big, huge discovery for myself, which worked for myself, but it might not work for everyone. But I just realized what I was doing, and I thought, hey, I've already suffered enough, and no one's going to care if I self-injure anyway. And I could walk around with an arm missing, and nobody would really care. So what's the point? why hurt myself any further than I've already been damaged, by other people, at the hands of other people, especially my parents. And so I thought, why continue that on, when I know that I didn't deserve that as a child, I don't deserve it as an adult, and so why am I doing this to myself? I had to really stop and think about it, and I'm so glad that I did, because it actually woke me up to the fact that I wanted to fight to stay alive and not fight to die or hurt myself. And so I thought, hey, this is great. I realized for the first time that I wanted to fight to live instead of die, because my family was always talking about suicide, and one of my brothers did commit suicide, and one of my other brothers, I talk about this all the time, but it's so important, he died of a drug overdose in a shelter, and his whole life was just all about drugs and drug abuse, comas, drug-induced comas. His whole life was just, I'm surprised he made it to the age of 44, I really am. But these were my brothers, and they were good guys. They grew up in a horrible home, the same home I grew up in, and they really had a hard time coping, and they didn't get any help. They didn't get any real help. They didn't know how to get help. I think they didn't know how to cope. So they just turned to drugs, both of them, and it just ruined their lives. And so I thought, I don't want to, go that path, and I would hope that other people wouldn't, and growing up in a home where people are telling you that they should have killed you, threatening your life, and basically saying that they should have murdered all of the children. My parents were always talking about death and killing each other and killing us, right? And this wasn't just something that we heard like, once a week. This would be something that my parents could say, on a daily basis. You know what I mean? If things were going really bad for a few months in the home, you could hear this like all the time. And then some of the siblings, of course, would say that they should have killed the parents, and of course everybody was saying they should have killed everybody. There was a lot of psychological and mental instability in our home, with my mom being manic depressive and my dad being borderline schizophrenic, and the two of them hating each other, and the kids, right? So it was really bad. And so there was no sense of hope in that home. There was no sense of love or care. Everybody was just fighting to stay alive. And I thought that I was already dead at the age of 10. I was just like, why doesn't somebody just kill me? Because my spirit's already gone, you know what I mean? That's how I felt. And so growing up as an adult, really, I had to learn how to fight to stay alive instead of kill myself. So this is the whole issue, right? I hope everybody will do that, you know what I mean? Because we don't deserve to suffer anymore, right? If you've suffered as a child in an abusive home, and or any type of abuse, it doesn't matter. It all hurts the same. It all hurts. And so, if you've already suffered in a home like that, you don't deserve to suffer as an adult. And that just breaks my heart to know that there's so many people out there who are having such a hard time because of the abuse they suffered, and quite often people don't know it. Not very many people as an adult would have known that I was going through this stuff, because they wouldn't have searched my heart. I would talk to a few people. I have talked to people in the past, and they really just didn't want to be there for me, you know what I mean? Most of them actually just left my life. They just were gone. And so then I stopped telling people, because I was like, well, I'm just losing all my friends anyway. And some of my friends I actually pushed away because they were just so rude. I was like, forget it. I don't need any more abuse in my life, especially from friends. Forget it. So that's the whole issue. Quite often survivors will be suffering on their own. There's no one really to talk to because family members are just not there, or the family's completely split up, or there's no one left in the family. This can happen. And so that's why I just say, keep reaching out, and if you need to talk to me or whatever, you can get a hold of me on blogtalkradio.com. I have, lots of resources. I'm also just a good ear and a good shoulder, because I know what it's like to be suffering with this, through this stuff, you know what I mean? And I know what it does to people, and I've seen a lot of my friends were abused as children, quite a few of them actually, and they went on to have very destructive lives, and I don't even know if they're alive today because I can't find them, And so it's just absolutely horrible what happens to people, and that's why I work so hard every day to do what I can to stop child abuse and promote, prevention and awareness, education regarding child abuse, so that we can stop it and make a difference for children today and tomorrow and the next day, right? So that we don't have so many more survivors of adult survivors trying to cope and get through this whole mess, right? With all the issues surrounding it. So that's why it's so important. So, definition of self-injury here, it says, self-injury, self-inflicted violence. Self-injury as behavior or self-mutilation is defined as a deliberate, intentional injury to one's own body that causes tissue damage or leaves marks for more than a few minutes, which is done to cope with an overwhelming or distressing situation. It says the most common self-injurious behaviors are cutting, branding, picking at skin, and hair pulling. Those are some of the most common self-injurious behaviors. Also hitting, bone breaking. I actually used to do that when I was young. Punching, head banging, multiple piercing or tattooing, and drinking harmful chemicals. So that's just horrible, right? Cutting, it says here, involves making cuts or scratches on the body with any sharp object, including knives, needles, razor blades, or even fingernails. The arms, legs, and front of the torso are most commonly cut because they're easily reached and easily hidden under clothing. So lots of people do that, and people always think, oh, why are they doing that? What could cause somebody to do that? There's lots of reasons for it, and it's not just because it's some sort of a fad or something, right? A lot of times people do that to cope in one way or another, so that's the whole issue, and it's very sad. So if somebody's cutting, there's got to be an underlying issue there somewhere. People do not intentionally hurt themselves. It's just not it's not in the normal makeup for people to do that. It's something that they're doing because they need to. They feel that they need to, which is very sad, because there's other ways to cope, without damaging ourselves even further. But that's just it. I wanted to gouge myself and to really scar myself up, because I thought if I could just gouge myself, then people would see the pain that's in my heart. And I thought, who am I kidding? Nobody's going to care. You know what I mean? I really didn't have it at that point in my lifetime, which was about three and a half years ago. The only person that would have cared would have been my sweetheart, and he would have just been mad at me, because he would have been like, why are you doing this to yourself? You've already had a hard enough time. Don't hurt yourself further, right? So he would have been the only one to care, really. The rest of the world would have just gone on, and then I would just be having these huge gashes and gouges, and I already have enough scars, you know what I mean? So this is the whole issue. Why do that to yourself when there's other ways to learn how to cope with that pain and stuff. There's other coping mechanisms we can use that are a lot more healthier and actually will help us to get to the root of the problem. That's what I think is so great about it. Instead of just continuing on in a sort of a behavior that doesn't get us anywhere, I think there's better ways to cope, and there's all kinds of websites out there on coping with adult survivor issues, and I think a person, if you just take a look and see, I've done actually a lot of looking at them and checking out the different ways to cope, and it really has helped. When I feel a little bit out of control, I've learned to actually stay grounded, stay focused, focus on one thing in the room or all blue things. Just count the blue things in the room. Find your feet, take a deep breath. There's all kinds of ways a person can do that. Writing in a journal helps, letting your thoughts out. I wrote my public blog, which turned into a book, and that really helped. Just to write that blog, I mean, not every night, but pretty much for about a month or so, every night I would sit down and write another chapter in that blog, and it really helped me to get that out of my system, because I didn't want to go to my grave with that, you know what I mean? I thought, man, I'm going to go to my grave, and my two brothers went to their graves in silence and shame. No one gave a two hoots that they were abused as children. They just thought they were a bunch of losers and drug addicts, and nobody cared. Nobody saw, really, people must have known, but nobody was in the home watching the abuse that I saw that was directed towards my brothers, which was just horrible, mostly from my dad. My mom was my main abuser, but my dad was my brother's abuser mainly. My mom a little bit too, but my dad was the main culprit in that, and there was no love in that home, no love at all, and just a bunch of hatred and abuse, physical, verbal, it was just absolutely horrible. And so, I'm so glad to be able to write my book and my story, but the blog really helped. And even if you don't want to go public with your story, for there's many reasons why many people wouldn't, even they say if you write it out on paper and then destroy the paper, but at least it lets it come out of your system. See, there's so many different ways. I would really suggest taking a look around. Michael C. Irving has a website. He's a psychotherapist and a survivor of child abuse, and he's got his own website, Irving Studios. You can look on it. You can look on the web, and you can find it. It's called the Child Abuse Monument. Child Abuse Monument. It's up here in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and Michael C. Irving is the founder and the creator of the Child Abuse Monument, he's a sculptor and a psychotherapist, but he's also a survivor of child abuse. And he has a great website for adult survivors. You can look on there and find information related to coping mechanisms and how to cope, with all the different types of abuse that a person has been through, there's different ways to learn how to cope with it. And so I really like that website. If you just type right into your browser, Child Abuse Monument, and it will come up, and you'll see Irving Studios or Michael C. Irving, Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And this is a great monument for child abuse survivors. They got to put their handprint, their own handprint in their poetry and whatnot, their artwork on this monument, and it stands as a tribute and dedicated to all children who have lost their lives or who have been abused and survived child abuse. Right? It's a great website, and they have some awesome coping skills on there, which we have gone over already, probably 150 shows ago, somewhere back in, probably December or January or maybe even November. I started the shows in November, so I would say it was probably in January sometime that I was doing those shows on the Child Abuse Monument and the coping lists, right? So important. So they say here branding. Branding is burning self with a hot object, like, heating something up and then burning yourself with it. That's branding. And picking at skin, this is another thing that people will do. Reopen wounds, right? And it's an impulse control disorder characterized by repeated urge to pick at one's own skin, often to the extent that damage is caused, which relieves stress or is gratifying. Hair pulling is another one that people do. It's an impulse control disorder which at times seems to resemble a habit. It's an addiction or an obsessive compulsive disorder. The person has an irresistible urge to pull out hair from any part of their body. Hair pulling from the scalp often leaves patchy bald spots on their head, which they often hide by wearing hats, scarves, and wigs. Abnormal levels of serotonin or dopamine may play a role in this disorder. The combined treatment of using an antidepressant, such as they list here anafranil, and cognitive behavioral therapy (CBT), has been effective in treating this disorder. CBT teaches you about what emotions and triggers are involved in hair pulling, and when you gain awareness of pulling, you can learn to substitute healthier behaviors instead. So that's the thing, right, with these self-injuring cutting and stuff like that, burning and all this hair pulling and bone breaking. There's other ways to learn to cope, without hurting ourselves. So that's the whole issue. And I think as long, we can find better ways to cope. There has to be a better way to cope, right? Hitting, like with a hammer or other object, bone breaking, punching, head banging, more often seen with autism or severe mental retardation. And as far as bone breaking, just people do it. They will break their own bones. I know when I was growing up, me and a friend used to run around trying to break our own bones, but I don't know why we were doing that, but we both grew up abused, and we were having a lot of behavioral issues and all kinds of stuff like that, and wanted to really, I think we just thought we were really tough, because we had survived these abusive homes, and we just thought we were so cool, and we thought, hey, if we break our bones, we can get on crutches. And of course, a couple years later, I ended up on crutches for a year from a car accident that I had. Really just crazy behavior. It's horrible to break your bones because once your bones are broken, it's really difficult for it to feel good again from a broken bone. I'm in pain every day. Steady, constant pain from that car accident. Not only that, but my friends are too, and from years and years ago, and it's absolutely horrible. Multiple piercing or tattooing may also be a type of self-injury, especially if pain or stress relief is a factor. So, if people just continually pierce themselves or tattoo themselves, right? It could be a way of relieving stress. Drinking harmful chemicals. I don't list anything else here, but that's just horrible, right? I just think people just should find better ways to cope. Excuse me, I have to sneeze. We have about a minute left. I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, and I'm so happy to stand with them, let me tell you. You can check our website out. There's all kinds of information on there regarding child abuse issues, symptoms, signs and symptoms, how to report child abuse, http www.dreamcatchersforabusedchildren.com. And we're on everywhere. We're on MySpace, we're on Facebook, we're on Blog Talk Radio, Dreamcatchers Talk Radio, at www.blogtalkradio.com/Dreamcatchers, and I hope you will check it out. And I'm so happy to volunteer and stand with them to stop child abuse and prevent child abuse. And if you all want to get involved, just by all means get a hold of us. And we thank you so much. All of us thank you, and I thank you for listening to my shows. I never knew when I started doing these shows how many people would be tuning in. And I tell you, I'm so thankful, and really I appreciate the support, because I consider you all my family, really, my friends and family, and I thank you so much for being in my life, being a part of my life, and tuning in and being here with me on a regular basis. I just love you all so much. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you tonight. I'll be back on at 9:30 Mountain Standard Time with child abuse prevention, and human rights abuse prevention is up to us. And for a half an hour show tonight, and then tomorrow same time again, 6 o'clock in the morning, for one child abuse survivor to another. And until then, just take care of yourselves, everybody. Keep reaching out. Keep that hope alive. If you need to contact me for whatever reason, please do, because, I'm an ear. I love to be a shoulder for people, because I know how hard it is to not have a shoulder to lean on. And when you find somebody who really cares, it's so awesome. And I found a whole bunch of people that really care, and, I like to be a shoulder too as well. So, because I know how hard it is to suffer with this stuff, and, lived a whole life of it. I know so many people have. We sadly share that common bond. And so, if you need help or resources, or if there's something that I can do, let me know, because I know how hard it is. So take care, everybody. Have a great day. And just remember to keep reaching out, keep that hope alive. We do count, we do matter, and that's the truth. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.